Okay, so here's the first question that we'll do, right? So let me first just copy this on that document and then we get started. Okay, so students, let's read the question together. The question says, sometimes the development of a project in an urban area is encouraged by a government. At other times, the priority is to support rural areas. Explain what benefits might be obtained by encouraging investment in rural areas, right? So five five classes, Amna, Monday to Friday. And if there is and if in any week a class is skipped, then we will have a makeup over the weekend. So that's the plan. And then okay, so I mean, we can keep Friday reserved for past papers, but the way I want to proceed, because I mean, it's a crash course of a thing, right? That we'll be doing. So I don't just want to keep Friday reserved for that, right? A better strategy would be that, let's say, we do a topic, and as soon as we complete a topic, then in the coming in the next 1 or 2 classes after covering a topic, we do past papers related to that. So that's what I think is a better strategy. And then if you want to reserve entire Friday's class for past papers, I mean, I don't mind that. So yeah, think about these things, just share it then. Yeah, share it then and in the group, and we will stick to that plan, right? We good on this? Okay, yeah. Right. So just share the list of the Amna. Let's not discuss it right now. Just share the list of topics. In fact, both of you, Mubin and Amna, share the list of topics that you want to cover first, right? In the WhatsApp group after today's class or tomorrow sometime, right? Before tomorrow's class, and then we will, make a schedule. We will see that which topics, like whatever the order is as per the syllabus. So we'll go in that order, right? And after we have covered, as I said, after we cover a topic, we will do past papers related to that. Sounds good? Okay, now students, think about this. So the A part of the question says, explain what benefits might be obtained by encouraging investment in rural areas. So what we already know, urban areas are cities where you have access to sanitation facilities, clean drinking water, proper housing facilities. Law and security oftentimes is more available in urban areas. You have good education, healthcare center, hospitals, roads, infrastructure, and all these things, right? Internet access and so on. In rural areas, these are, as we say, a little far away from main city centers. There's limited commercial activity. Housing facilities might not be that good. Sanitation facilities sometimes lack. Access to electricity, internet is limited, and so on and so forth. So all of these things define, these are the characteristics of rural areas, right? But think about it. Think of Pakistan, and that will help you better understand what benefits can Pakistan get by encouraging investment in rural areas. What type of investments could be made, first of all, and then how will that benefit the economy overall? How will that benefit people who are living in rural areas? So think about it and just keep sharing all the points that come to your mind in the chat, and I'll be listing that down. So first of all, think about this, right? If a country is a developing economy, or let's put it down like this, a developing economy is more dependent on agriculture sector, which is present in rural areas. So a developing economy is more dependent on agriculture sector, as we know, right? And therefore, it's important that the country invest in rural areas, because that is the sector which is contributing most to its GDP, right? I don't know exact figure, but still in Pakistan, primary sector contributes more than 50% to the GDP, right? So all the agriculture that we do, fishing, mining, things like that, right? So it's contributing almost half of our GDP, right? So just imagine how much big chunk it is, right? So this being said, therefore, investment in rural areas is quite crucial for economic growth, right? Now think about this. So if agriculture is contributing a big chunk in your GDP, then you need to invest in rural areas because that's where the agriculture sector is present, right? And obviously, when your agricultural output increases, that will contribute to that will help in achieving higher GDP growth rate, high economic output, and all that, right? Then, apart from that, what are the benefits can you think of, right? With country can foreign exchange reserve, right? So think about this. So not only is that primary sector or agriculture sector is contributing a big proportion to our GDP, it's also making up a big chunk of our exports, right? And this is, I'm talking everything with regards to developing country, right? Are you getting me or not, right? So in case of developing country, where a big proportion of its population, in fact, that is something that I forgot to mention over here. In developing countries like Pakistan, a big proportion of their population is living in rural areas. And these rural areas are contributing to your agriculture sector, which is the major contributor in your GDP, which is the major contributor in your exports and all that, right? So with investment in agriculture, with investment in rural areas, right, what do you expect? You expect a boost in your GDP, you expect an increase in your exports, and with that, what else? What else can you think of, right? Farmers will allow them to afford better living standards, so can reduce rural urban migration, right? Do you guys know what rural urban migration is, right? So I mean, think about it. Since quality of life is not that good in rural areas, a lot of people migrate to urban centers to find jobs, to earn more, and to have a relatively better living standard. Now the problem with developing countries is that if a lot of people migrate to urban centers, there are not enough urban centers or not enough cities in your country to accommodate all this influx, right? Which means what? The few cities that you have, they become overcrowded. When these cities become overcrowded, then it means that there's more congestion. Housing facilities get deteriorated, because I mean, just think about what happens in Karachi. The population is so much, right, that it's a burden on the city's resources. There is not enough housing, right? There's too much congestion on the road, there's too much of pollution, same goes for Lahore, and so on, right? So all these things are kind of bad for the economy. More awareness, high literacy, good. Social problems, growth due to increase in aggregate demand, better living standards, exactly, right? So you also are thinking on the same lines as I wanted you to, right? Is this making sense, friends? Right? So these are some of the benefits. Mubin, can you elaborate on social problems? What do you mean by that? Population will
Also, sir, greater investment, foreign direct investment due to better law and order situation and less crime rate since people are going to have income.
I mean, yeah, that can happen, but I'm just thinking, how will that? So if you're investing primarily in your rural areas, uh, then will that really attract more foreign direct? I mean, it can overall, because then it's not your urban areas which are kind of developed. You also have decent living standards in your rural areas as well. So I mean, that can attract foreign direct investment, especially given the fact that overall GDP is increasing and GDP per capita is higher. So think about this: why China and India get to attract so much investment and not Pakistan? Because their average income is much higher than what Pakistan's is, right? And therefore it means that a typical Chinese or a typical average Indian or an average Chinese can afford much more things compared to a Pakistani, right? And obviously, since those are bigger markets, more profitable markets, therefore foreign businesses prefer to locate in those countries rather than Pakistan. So that's a good point. Yeah. Correct. If overall income levels, GDP per capita is rising due to development in due to investment in rural areas, then that means more foreign direct investment and all that. Correct. We'll be able to access better quality education and healthcare, which will provide more trained and productive workforce. Now think about this. Another challenge that these developing countries face, since rural population is not very educated, right? So overall, these are the people who do not get enough opportunities to grow, professionally grow, and to earn higher, to earn more later on in their life. So I mean that creates a disparity, like that creates a gap, income gap between rural population and urban population, right? So with more investment, meaning like investment in education, healthcare, when these people have better healthcare services and better education facilities, then obviously they will also be more educated, more healthy, and therefore they can earn more later on. So less disparity. More exports means stronger currency. Exactly, that's correct, right? So with a boost in your exports, your exchange rate is expected to appreciate, become stronger, which means that with stronger exchange rate, you will be able to import at much lower cost. That's correct. Good point. Imports are cheaper and therefore cost push inflation can be reduced. Excellent point, right? Moveen, did you get this? So with stronger exchange rate, think about it. When you're importing something from another country, when you export more, demand for your currency increases. When demand for your currency increases, your exchange rate appreciates. With appreciation in your exchange rate, when you're importing something, those imports will cost you less. And therefore, your cost push inflation will be lower. Is it making sense? Right? Are we good on this? Any confusion? Perfect, right? So these are all the things that you have to talk about. Will provide more trained and productive workforce for the economy, right? Rural urban migration will be less, so lesser people will be moving from rural to urban areas. Therefore, lesser pressure on urban centers like congestion, pollution, crime rates, right? So all these things. In fact, urban crime rate is very much related to unemployment, right? So when people are constantly migrating from rural areas to urban areas, why? Because as I told you, living standards might not be that high in rural areas. There might not be good quality schools, not a lot of job opportunities and so all that. So when they move to urban areas and then they again stay unemployed, why would they stay unemployed even when they migrate to urban areas? I mean, it's not that always it's the case, but there is a high chance that rural population stays unemployed because of the fact that since they never had good education, they're not competent enough to penetrate the labor market. And when they stay unemployed, then there is a high chance of them getting involved in things like, crime and so on and so forth, right? So that's another um, challenge for the country, right? So given all these reasons, it's important, especially more important for a developing country to invest in its rural area, right? To reduce income disparity, to reduce rural urban migration, to allow for better education and healthcare in rural areas so that overall workforce of the country is more productive. And obviously, most important of all, to boost your agriculture and primary sector and therefore to boost your GDP and exchange rate and exports, right?
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So this will definitely boost GDP, but will it boost GNP, which is national product, so aggregate supply also?
Okay, so what's the difference, Amna, between GDP and GNP?
I am unaware, which is why I'm
Okay,
asking.
let me tell you. Okay, that's a good question. Students, have a look at this. Since you asked me, let me explain you. So GDP versus GNP. Now think about this. The idea is very simple. Whatever is being produced within the borders of Pakistan, right? Whatever is produced in Pakistan, that is part of Pakistan's GDP, gross domestic product. Okay. Now, what is gross national product? GNP stands for gross national product. If you think about this, in GDP, we are also including income that is generated by foreign businesses. Now, think about this. So I mean, if there is a KFC outlet, I mean, that would be owned by, because most of these are franchises, so perhaps that's not a good example, but think about this. Okay, so let's say there is a Samsung factory in Pakistan, right? Owned by Samsung, right? Now, whatever Samsung is producing in Pakistan, that will obviously be part of Pakistan's GDP, gross domestic product. But that business isn't a Pakistani business. So it is technically not our nationals or not our citizens' income. Are you getting what I'm trying to say? Right? So GNP, gross national product, only look at the income, or only calculates the income of Pakistani nationals. And that is regardless of whether they are living in Pakistan or outside Pakistan. So another way to understand this is that a lot of Pakistanis are working outside Pakistan. So whatever income they earn there by working, or by having their own businesses, or so on, right? So that will be part of Pakistan's gross national product, but that will not be part of Pakistan's gross domestic product, because that's not being produced within Pakistan. Is this making sense? Right? So let me write down the definition.
So, sir, GNP will include remittances and
Yes.
earning.
Yes. Yeah. Income abroad. Yeah. Including remittance. Yeah. That's correct. In country, right? Is it making sense? Whereas gross national product includes income earned by countries' nationals, regardless of their place of residence. Right? Is it making sense? Right? So the formula is like this. Now, GNP is equals to GDP minus GDP minus income earned by foreigners in your country, plus income earned by nationals working in foreign countries. Students, are you following me? Right? Now think about this. So GNP, how do we calculate GNP from GDP? So from GDP, first of all, you'll subtract the income that foreigners earned in your country. Income earned by foreigners in your country plus income earned by nationals working in foreign countries. Is making sense? Investment stock exchange comes into GNP, uh, gross national product. Investment in, right? Okay, so think about this, Mubi. Yeah. So let's say Pakistanis have made investment in foreign stock exchanges, right? So Pakistani nationals, let's say, have invested in New York Stock Exchange or Tokyo Stock Exchange or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So whatever income they earn from that, not the investment, but the income. So like the dividend, the profit that they get on their investments, that will be part of Pakistan's GNP. Yeah, that's correct. So it's like saying that when you invest, so let's say Pakistani business opens a store in another country, right? Could be a store, could be any clothing store, or let's say a retail store or whatever, right? So not the investment, not the amount that they use to start that business, but later on when they earn income through that, the profit that those businesses make, that will be part of Pakistan's gross national product, but that will not be part of Pakistan's domestic product, because their business is not located in Pakistan. FBI won't be part of GNP, right? I'm not, what do you mean by FPI?
Foreign portfolio investment?
No, investment, as I said, no, not the investment. Students, think about it. This is the income. So income is in the form of, think about it. Okay. So how should I explain this? Investment is the amount, it's the finance that you use to start a business. Are you getting me, right? And the expectation of starting a business is that in the future, it will provide you some return, some profit, right? So investment that you guys are talking about, that is recorded in our balance of payments. That's recorded in a balance of payments because that tracks all international transactions. So whenever money flows, now listen to me very carefully, please. Whenever money is flowing between countries, like when there is international transaction taking place, all of that is part of our balance of payments. Yes or no? Imports, exports, what happens? You are sitting in one country, but you're buying a product from another country, or you are sitting in one country and you're selling a product to another country. Exports, imports. Then similarly, whatever investments are international investments, those are also part of your balance of payments. You record all those transactions there. Why? Because if I'm a Pakistani national and I'm investing in a foreign country, that could be any sort of investment. I might buy a property there. I might start a business there. I might invest in stock exchange there, right? All these things, right? So all these things are recorded in my country's balance of payment and with whichever other country I'm investing in that country's balance of payments. But income, when we talk about GDP, gross domestic product, it's basically the production, it's basically the income that's generated. So income could be generated in how many ways? Either I'm working, so let's say a lot of Pakistanis, I'm sure that's true in your families as well, so some of your family members must be living abroad. Yes or no? So those people, right, whatever income they are earning there, right, that is part of Pakistan's gross national product, but not part of Pakistan's domestic product because they are not working within Pakistan. Similarly, whatever businesses Pakistanis own in foreign countries, that's part of Pakistan's gross national product, but not part of Pakistan's domestic product. Are you guys getting me? Right? So for this, I will highly recommend you. So for this, I will highly recommend you. Can you see my screen? Right? So go to Mega Lecture, right? Go to Mega Lecture YouTube channel, and they just search the topic of balance of payments, right? Search that video, and you will, since this is part of AS economics, right? Oh, right? And then you will be able to watch the video of, and that will give you a quick overview of, yeah, balance of payment, this one, right? Just watch this, and you will get answers to all of your questions, right? That how transactions are recorded in balance of payment. So coming back to the point, investments are recorded in balance of payments. But when we talk about GDP or income, income is what you generate as the result of your investment. Are you getting me? So rent is income, but buying a house is income. So are you getting me? Now this is a little tricky, but you have to understand this. When you buy a house, is that investment or is that income? When you buy a property, that's investment. Excellent, right? So this is investing in an asset, buying an asset. But when you rent that property out, right, when you put it on Airbnb, right, or when you rent it out, the rent that you receive from that asset, from that house, that's your income, right? So investment will be recorded in the balance of payment, right? Because it's an international transaction, but that amount will not be recorded in your GDP or GNP, right? Because that's not an income, right? Getting me, students? So that's what you need to understand. But yeah, when you say that whatever income your business is generating, or by working abroad, whatever income our nationals are earning, that will be part of our gross national product. Yes, yes, only income from abroad. Yes, yes. Rent, dividends, stock exchange, on investment in stock exchange, working. Right, students, have a look at this. So I've listed all these things for you. So income includes rent, dividend on investment in stock exchange, through employment, like if you're working in a foreign company, that's through employment, or profit from a business, is what is recorded in gross national product, right? Easy, simple, students, right? But do watch the lecture on balance of payments. That will help you better understand. So long story short, whatever goods and services are produced within the borders of Pakistan, regardless of whether they were produced by Pakistani businesses or foreign businesses. So if Toyota has a production plant in Pakistan, right? Or Honda has a production plant in Pakistan. Now, these are not Pakistani businesses, but since they are producing in Pakistan, that will be part of Pakistan's domestic product, right? Because it's produced within borders of Pakistan. On the other hand, when you calculate GNP, you will subtract the income, you will subtract the profits that these businesses made. Why? Why? Because these are not local businesses. And in this, you will add the income that your nationals are making through businesses or through employment by working in foreign countries. So simply speaking, GNP is equals to GDP minus income earned by foreigners in your country. So whatever foreigners are earning, you subtract that from GDP, but you add your nationals' income who are working abroad. And whatever final answer you get, that is GNP. Now, just to quickly help you understand, developing countries' GNP, developing countries have higher GNP than GDP. And can you explain me why? Developing countries, I repeat myself.
Because more people working abroad looking for
Exactly.
opportunities, such as Pakistan means
Perfect.
both look are in UAE.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, correct, right? So more people from developing countries go to developed countries to work, to start businesses, to settle there, and things like that. So this chunk that's coming from abroad is bigger compared to this chunk. Why? Because not many countries, not many people from other countries come to developing countries, right? So since just like there's rural urban migration we were talking about, similarly, there's more developing to developed countries migration. So obviously people always, when you see, it's people of developing countries going to developed countries rather than vice versa. Easy. We got on the students. Okay. Now that was about it. Any other confusion? Okay. And by the way, if you still have confusion about this, we can do a separate lecture because this is part of A2 syllabus, incomes, statistics, national income statistics. So GDP, GNP, what's the difference? How do we calculate it and so on, right? So we can even do a more comprehensive recap of this later on. Okay, discuss whether it might be better. Now, this is another very general question, students. Have a look at this. Discuss whether it might be better to conserve rather than exploit the resources of a country. So what do you think? In this question, benefits of conservation, exploitation of resources. So you simply need to talk about that, which of the two is a better strategy, whether to conserve your resources. What does conservation means? Conservation means that you don't use resources to the extent that they become deplete. That they deplete means to get, like, to completely finish, right? So some are renewable resources, some are non-renewable resources. Now think about this. If you think about sunlight, or if you think about air, I mean, you can never consume enough sunlight or air that you run out of it. But clean air is a limited resource. If there is a lot of pollution in your country, then clean air will become limited. And that means that, in fact, in some countries, people have already started paying for clean air, right? I mean, just like water, if you think about water. So technically water is also renewable resource, right? But clean water or drinking water, clean drinking water is a scarce resource, right? And that's why there is bottled water and you have to pay to find clean drinking water. Are you getting me? So conservation means conservation of resources, if you are looking for an exact definition, to the extent that they become start depleting out of those resources. Students, are you following me, right? So conservation means that you use resources at a rate that it doesn't deplete them. So for instance, if you think of wood, so if you're cutting wood, obviously you need wood for different things. Then you are also planting enough trees that the balance is kind of maintained, right? So similarly, if you think about other resources, right? If you think of coal or oil, right? So if you are using your coal or oil reserves at a very fast rate, then you do get to estimate that, let's say, in coming 5 years or in coming 10 years, you will run out of those and so on and so forth, right? So that is what conservation means. So it's basically complete opposite of exploitation. Exploitation is like you're not mindful of how fast you're using your resources. You're just exploiting your resources, using those, and you don't care that when you will run out of those, right? But conservation means that you are taking steps and you're taking appropriate measures to make sure that those resources last longer and even your future generations get to benefit from those, right? Are you getting me? Okay, now think about this. So the idea is fairly simple if you think about exploitation of resources. So when you use resources, you get to produce more goods and services. When you produce more services, what happens? Your current generations will have higher GDP. Are you getting me? What does exploitation means? That if you have coal reserves, if you have oil reserves, whatever resources you have, right? You make you make most use of them, right? You produce more electricity, you run more factories, produce more goods and services, and therefore higher GDP, higher incomes, right? But this strategy comes with major challenges. Now, the world has already realized that the oil will not last forever, right? So that's why countries are making investment. They're doing investment in research and development to find alternate energy sources. Like solar energy is developed a lot. Wind energy has been developed. Nuclear energy, there has been work going on nuclear energy and things like that, right? So that's what conservation means, that you are also mindful of that you might run out of these resources, and therefore you need to have alternatives to fall back on, right? Are you getting me? And so on. But obviously, that's the benefit of conservation, right? Any confusion? So this is the entire debate that you need to talk about, right? So basically, more exploitation in a nutshell, I can put it down like this: if you're exploiting more resources, then your current generations will have more, then your current generations will have higher living standards. But that would mean that since you will sooner run out of your resources, then your future generations will not have as high living standard as much what your current generations are experiencing. And on the opposite, what you can do is you can conserve more, which means that you are compromising on the living standards of current generations, but that's in the hope of having higher living standards for your future generations. Are you getting me? But at the end of the
Sir,
day, yeah.
sorry, could we continue from tomorrow?
Yeah, we can. But I will quickly show you a question. If you can, kind of, that really helps if you do questions on your own. So I'm just sharing it in the group. Even if you can't do full-fledged, right? Kind of make some bullet points. And also after today's class, right? Do share your plan. What topics you want to cover, right? Want me to cover in the classes, and then we'll discuss it. Then from tomorrow, we'll start following that, right? We're good on this? Okay, so let's stop here for today. And tomorrow I'll see you at 7, right? Take care and have a good night. Bye.
Yes, sir.
Allah Hafiz.